Roll call shows that Councilor Grenier, Councilor Mitchell, Councilor Gardner are here by remote. Councilor Wingard and myself, Tom Perry, are here in person. And I suspect we're going to get some other folks joining us.
Tom, I'm here.
Thank you. Cheryl Robertson is here. Councilor Robertson is here. So before we get on to the agenda, I'm just going to do a few little opening things, and I'm going to pass it off to our different committee chairs to run their section of the meeting. Just by way of logistics, we have turned off the chat function. Not all of us could see it. It seemed to be somewhat disruptive, so we're going to try working without it. If we decide we would like any couple of public comment on an item, the public can raise their hand and they will be recognized, but we'll make a decision on whether we want public comment on item by item. Normally in these hybrid meetings, we vote by roll call. However, since in these committee meetings, we are only recommending things to go to council for final action or back to staff for more work, we can vote by raising our hands, physically raising our hands, and that will be sufficient for voting on items here. Let's see. I have a couple of other items. I think maybe just very quickly, the guidelines that we have agreed to, I'm just going to read them quickly because we haven't spoken about them in meetings for quite some time. And we agreed to these: be on time, come prepared, and stay present. Let everybody participate, don't interrupt, be brief and don't repeat. Seek first to understand, ask questions. You can disagree without being disagreeable. Listen with an open mind, value and respect other points of view, and respectfully challenge ideas, but not the person, and offer solutions. I think that will get us started, and I would like to end by 5:30 if we possibly could. So let's try to be as efficient as we can. And having said that, I will pass it on to Councilor Grenier, who is going to facilitate the first section of our meeting.
Great, thank you, Tom. I'm obviously, I'm going to rely on you guys there in the actual space. Like in the old days, I cannot see when somebody raises their hand because I typically want people to raise their hand before they comment or ask questions. So if you could help me there at the chambers, that would be great. First, I need to ask, Mandy, do you say your name Levine or Levine?
It's Levine. Thank you so much for asking.
Great, I just wanted to make sure. So we're going to go into community interview of Mandy Levine to provide technical assistance and training to the town council related to diversity, equity, and inclusion. I want to remind everybody that this is simply a time for Mandy to introduce herself, give us her background. This is not an interview, and let's make her feel comfortable and at home. And we'll have her go ahead and talk to us, and then I will let people ask questions as they feel. So please, Mandy, go ahead.
Sure. Well, very nice to meet you all. I think there's some participants I can't actually see on the screen, but this is my first live Facebook streaming interview or discussion. So very nice to meet you all. I have been doing diversity, equity, and inclusion related work for a number of years. I'll use DEI just for simplicity's sake. And I started my career out as an employment attorney, which I did for a number of years in Massachusetts and Vermont. Discovered pretty quickly was not a terrific fit for my personality, and that I was a little less combative, a little more collaborative, and so transitioned over to doing some civil rights work for the Anti-Defamation League in Boston. Did that for a couple of years, and then ultimately, when I came back home to Maine about 10 years ago, transitioned over to human resources related work, and then started carving out a real focus in DEI. So for up until about a year and a half ago at this point, I was spearheading diversity, equity, inclusion work for the city of Portland. So I'm very conversant in working with municipalities. So I did that for about 3.5 years, spearheading their DEI related work for staff specifically. And then a little over a year ago, hung up my own shingle to create my own company. And I'm now focused exclusively on DEI trainings and consulting work. And so I'm working with organizations, large and small, a few municipalities right now, really helping folks wrap their arms and their brains around the myriad topics encompassed by DEI, whether that's tackling implicit biases and explicit biases, talking about microaggressions, trying to be an active bystander or to be an upstander in certain circumstances. I do a lot of traditional DEI consulting work, looking at policies and procedures and things like that to help organizations look at their practices through a DEI lens. And last but not least, I'm a professional investigator. I'm a PI with the state of Maine. So I do a lot of workplace investigations into allegations of harassment and discrimination. So that is what I do in a nutshell. I love the work tremendously. It's a really exciting time to be doing it in the state of Maine because it's really a new conversation for a lot of organizations and employers and municipalities. So it's really exciting and rewarding for me to get to be a partner to different organizations on that journey. So I hope that's kind of me in a nutshell, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that folks have or go into more detail on any of that.
Thank you, Mandy. Tom, can you please help me with seeing people on the screen who may have their hand up to ask questions?
I now ask my good town manager to help too.
Okay. Anybody have questions out there?
Megan does.
Yes. So, hi, nice to meet you.
You too.
So the ways in which the education piece could be beneficial to staff and council like is pretty straightforward for me.
Mhm.
What I'm wondering more about is implementation. Like for council as policymakers, we've really been struggling with how to take these concepts that in principle we're trying to support and promote and bring them from philosophy to practice. Can you
Mhm.
talk a little bit about how you help organizations kind of move forward from education to like implementation of these ideas?
Sure. Well, I think part of it is that baseline education and awareness that you raised is sometimes we're not even aware of the fact of when we're unintentionally creating barriers for certain groups of people. So I think part of it is having that really deliberate conversation where we bring some of our own blind spots to our outer awareness, and then it can be it can take a lot of different paths. I don't have a blueprint per se, but I think it's really working with an organization, working with a council to determine what are the goals that we want to accomplish, and then setting out to really accomplish those goals in a realistic time frame. And a lot of that is driven, I think, by what all you want to do and helping give you a framework for what that can look like. And so I candidly don't work with a lot of city or town councils. I'm typically working with organizations and employers and municipalities. But to me, that doesn't mean that the work's not transferable significantly. I think it's really more about wrapping your arms around what's the work you want to undertake and what do you have the bandwidth and the resources to undertake, and really looking at it in the long term. Do we want to focus on policies within a particular department, a typical or a particular realm of work that's being done within the town of Orono? But it's really driven, I think, by what your goals are internally, and I can help with parsing some of those out for you.
Thank you.
Sure.
Terry, if I could add, Owl has not caught up with me yet, I don't think. Yeah, I'm decidedly off screen. Let me try now. Now I'm on screen. There we go. Hi, everybody. When I look at Mandy helping council, it might not be as overt as what you're thinking, Megan. I'm thinking that you guys are gonna have an idea. And instead of trying to make the sausage of policy, Mandy would be able to help us kind of roll something out without having to reinvent the wheel, I guess is kind of my thought is she has worked in places where she's had to start from square one, but I've also noticed in our conversation, she is definitely open to acknowledging kind of where we are and the uniqueness of our organization to try to kind of fold things in so it's not a one size fits all, but what's doable. And I'm also hoping that she can help the council prioritize because there's an awful lot to unpack. And there are very scarce resources here. And so instead of getting in the middle of it and failing, I would rather kind of have a plan that we could pick off pieces of.
Laura Mitchell has her hand up. Go, Laura.
Hi, Mandy. Thank you for being here. I had a question about, so one of the things that council so we have this report, we did this survey, and we need to now we haven't done an inventory yet. And we said that we would, and we haven't really. There's a lot that has been done. And so the intention was to layer kind of that inventory and be more transparent and public with what actually is also happening, not just from a policy perspective, but from a town, a town as an organization perspective and as an employer, as a service provider for our community. And so I guess I'd be curious either like whether that's on your radar, and if so, how you would approach that, or how you would recommend like we as a council or a community approach that.
I want to make sure I'm answering the correct question. So is it, in terms of being on my radar, helping the council unpack those survey results? Is that what you're referring to? No. Okay.
No. So in parallel to the survey, which was more of an external process, we were also internally wanting to conduct an inventory of like, here are the policies that relate to DEI and or what the impact of that is. And as an organization, what work are we doing? What have we done? So we can, it's an inventory of what we have done.
Yep.
And so we as a council and as a town, we're charged with that. We haven't done that yet. And that work was supposed to be in parallel to this external work of the survey and the recommendations. And so was that something that you were thinking of? Is that something that you've done? And or how would you recommend we approach that?
So in terms of, I can't say that it was on my radar because the conversations started very recently between me and Sophie. And so we were initially talking about baseline trainings. And so I don't think that internal inventory was on my radar per se, but that doesn't mean it wouldn't be something that I would be interested in. And I would envision that being some sort of collaborative examination of what you have done. And I don't know where you're at in that process. So maybe the answer to that is there hasn't been a lot of work done, but it could be me collaborating with the council to examine what has been done, taking a look at any internal policies and seeing if something jumps out at me. Sometimes I look at policies and internal procedures through a slightly different lens because I am looking at it through that DI lens, and that typically has served me well. And so it's something as straightforward as, for example, your for the town, a job posting process. I can look at that from a very different lens in terms of, for example, are we unintentionally not attracting candidates from more diverse backgrounds because of the ways that we're wording things like that. So that sort of internal inventory could certainly be on my radar if that's something that you would want a consultant to be tasked with. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, but I also want to reiterate, this is a pretty much for Mandy, a meet and greet. Delving into stuff of layers is not where we're at tonight. These are basic getting to know who she is, understanding where she comes from, what she has to offer on a staff and council level. So let's be aware of these are the kind of questions for tonight. So Sophie, is there anybody else with their hand up?
I do not see any other hands.
And I just want to clarify, Terry, that staff has engaged Mandy to do the work internally. So this is really about council meeting Mandy and seeing if they want to engage a consultant to assist with external work.
Thank you. I think it's highly important that we recognize the fact that the staff has a different type of role. And I thought about this before about like when we look at, I know the question had come up in the past about who that individual and who would be the person to, or the individuals will say who that individual is. But I have to say that falls for me personally within your lap to make that determination. I would never want to walk into your space and dictate who and how that should look. So I rely on you to know who your staff is going to be more comfortable with.
So I have been interviewing, talking with, taking trainings from a variety of consultants offered up by Maine Municipal Association and the Maine Town and City Managers Association, and then just some that are in the region. And I think there are lots of people out there who have incredible bodies of work. Taking a training from Mandy, I immediately connected with her in a way that we have not connected with any of the other consultants. And I really think that she will understand the variety of perspectives and experiences on staff and really be able to have an effective training program here.
Great. Like I said, I trust your mindset and how in knowing your staff. So are there any other questions before I let Mandy's a busy person. So are there any other questions of Mandy before we let her go?
Cheryl?
Hi, not a question. Hi, Mandy. It's good to meet you.
You too.
I am going to reiterate Terry's perspective that I've looked at your website. It's very impressive. I've been a teacher. I've been a school teacher. So I was really looking at the middle school bullying and cyberbullying work that you do. But that's just neither here nor there. I trust that Sophie has a very clear understanding of what the needs are for her staff, and I just wanted to say welcome, and I will approve you based on what I've learned so far. So
thank you so much. Thank you for that. And I wanted to, one part of what I didn't include in my introduction, I think I gave you more of the headlines, but I think in terms of going to the more granular level, what I strive to do in my work, whether I'm facilitating a class or providing some sort of consulting advice, is I really try to make the content very approachable. And I really try to tackle it from a very non-shaming, non-blaming way, in a way that conversations about diversity and inclusion are really truly inclusive of everybody, and recognizing the demographics of Maine and the many different places that people are coming from within the state. I really want everyone to feel like they not only have that proverbial seat at the table, but they have a voice that's valued and heard. And that's work you have to do, I think, very delicately and very respectfully. And so to me, that's really what I ultimately strive to do, is to come from a place of wanting to understand and to be respectful, and recognizing that trying to shame someone into changing their mind is not going to be effective, which you would know, Councilor Robertson, from being a teacher or as a parent, it's not something that's typically very effective. So really trying to get people to be more curious and humble about the ways that they see other people is really what I aim to do.
Thank you, Mandy.
Sure, thank you. Nice to meet you all.
Great. So I'm going to say one last call here. If there's anybody else. Otherwise, Mandy, thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule. Look forward to future conversations with you, and hopefully the continuation of your amazing work that you're doing.
Thank you. Pleasure to meet you all. And I look forward to hearing more from you all.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye. Thanks so much.
Bye. So moving on to the next item, item B, review of planning board recommendations for revisions to mobile food vendor ordinance to allow certain qualifying applicants on property owned by the University of Maine to obtain permits issued by the code enforcement officer. We discussed this a little while ago, so we should be able to wrap this up.
Terry, before we move on, I'm just wondering if we want to just kind of take the pulse of the group to see if everybody is comfortable working with Mandy on the council. Sophie's made the decision for the staff, but we're interested in working, have her work with the council, both in a training mode and in a consulting mode. So,
okay, definitely. So, yeah.
can we get a sense for where people are with that? But to start off, I'm very comfortable with it, and I think having a consultant work with us on the DEI initiative will be very valuable.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Tom.
I'd like to, I'll just dive in and second that. I think in particular that there's a lot of value in having a shared language between staff and council in the same, for the same reason that we were developing a draft of a DEI glossary over the summer, that all of us kind of speaking the same language and being on the same page, I think is going to be enormously helpful, because a huge part of accomplishing these goals that we're setting out to accomplish is council working with staff, because so much of operations, is tied into these things that we're looking at. So being able to be on the same page and be a team and having a shared language, I think is going to be really valuable to the process.
Thank you, Meg. Anybody?
Yeah. Yeah, my hand was up, Terry.
Okay.
I think too, I agree too. And I think one of the things that we really need at this point is that this has become so contentious. And I'm really interested in a very objective point of view as far as, what we've been through so far. I think that we were ready for this a little while ago. And it's part of that foundation building that I was really hoping that we could have gotten done and had a little bit more foundation, I guess is a good word. So I agree. I think that she's highly qualified, and she understands municipalities, and she works with them. And I often feel that there's not a safe space to talk, and it would be nice to have somebody who had a very clear, objective perspective and point of view. So I'm in agreement with Tom and Megan.
I really appreciate what Megan said about speaking common language. I think that's going to be really important as staff and council continue to do this work. I feel comfortable working with Mandy in that regard. Or we may end up needing further support as a council as we go forward to really bring the goals of that report to life. So I like this as a first step, but there may be other steps in the future. And so I would just say that I'm comfortable working with her now. We may have more to do. as well.
Laura's hand is up.
Yeah, I just was gonna say, I think doing the training is critical, and that was a recommendation that we've known we needed to implement for a long time. So that's great. I think we're definitely gonna need additional support as we move through. I, don't have concerns having looked at our website. I don't know, based upon the committee that we worked with, whether there's expertise there and connections there to consultants that over time we should be considering. But I think doing a training that aligns with staff is totally makes sense.
Anything else?
Yeah, I kind of want to go back to where this, for me personally, I'm totally on board with Mandy. I think that let's not get lost in the committee side of this, and not that it's not important. This is a staff thing that is it's a separate thing, and I kind of want to make sure that we don't lose sight on that. That's why I kind of agree with how Meg put that. Working together, and so it's a staff council thing. So like I said before, Sophie knows her people better than we do, and what their needs are. And I mean, I can't dissect what Sophie's staff's needs are because I don't have that ability, but that's what my thoughts are.
And I just want to just to clarify, we're not just considering engaging Mandy for an educational seminar, or just going through a training. My understanding, in which I'm still very on board with, is that in addition to that kind of education, we're also looking at ways that we can make a plan to approach this the way that we always approach items, which is we have our professional staff who are experts in their fields and what they do, and we work collaboratively with them to take policy and put it into practice. And that's going to take the shared language that we'll all get from similar trainings from the same trainer, but also that we can, with Mandy, create a plan of attack so that we can take this piece by piece and actually get things going in the operations side with the technical support and expertise of our valuable staff.
Maybe we don't want to call it attack.
A good way, get after it.
I guess we're not voting, but we're supposed to be making a recommendation. And I'm hearing different descriptions of what we're saying yes or no to from different people. So without a proposal or a scope or something, I don't know what I'm responding to. So I don't have a problem with anything. I'm just telling you that I don't know what I'm responding to, because even in the agenda, it's the description of what's in the agenda versus what Megan is saying versus what Terry or Cheryl are saying are all different. So I don't have complaints. I don't know what I'm saying yes or no to, if in fact we are supposed to be saying yes or no to something.
So as I read the agenda, I see the training piece in the first paragraph for staff and council. And I see the consultant piece in the second paragraph to assist us with the DEI, implementing a DEI plan. So that's what I'm advocating for and voting for.
I think we're all pretty much on board for the
And
majority.
we may not agree on exactly every term, but.
Right. And I think our thoughts and mindsets are just branches off of that original thing. We all have our own ways of kind of envisioning this. But ultimately, it is a thing about allowing us and Sophie to continue on with Mandy being the individual to move to the next level. So if I'm in. I'm just saying I'm in, regardless of the verbiage or whatever, I'm in.
Yeah, and I just want to be very clear. I'm not making this up from my own thoughts, I would like, I mean, just to read directly from our background material, specifically having an outside expert who understands both DEI work and municipal government operations would assist as the town council works with technical assistance from staff to develop a formal longer-term plan for the town. So that's exactly verbatim what I'm responding to, Laura. And I maybe that's the way I'm reading it, but I think to me, it sounds like Tom just said, there's an education piece and then there's the technical assistance piece, which is, yes to both for me. I think it's a great step forward.
Should we have a show of hands? I don't know if you can see me, but my hand's up. Okay, I think we're all there.
Yeah, so I would just like to say, like, I'm in support of engaging Mandy Services for this purpose. I just want to know it may not preclude engaging other voices in the name of inclusion at some future point.
Absolutely.
I don't want to close that door.
Yeah, and I think you'll find that Mandy is not only open to that, but bringing it to the table for staff, for example. My senior staff is actually going to work with Mandy and TJ Holloway, who is from this area, but doesn't have the exact same credentials, but brings things that she doesn't to the table. So I think that will help. So I hate to further delay the conversation, but Mandy is going to be working with my staff definitely on October 1st, potentially on September 30th. Does council have availability or interest in trying to do a late afternoon training with dinner and then like an hour-long work session to at least begin to get some thoughts on where we go next?
What day of the week?
It's a Thursday.
The first is a Thursday?
No, the 30th is a Thursday. So it would be the 30th at night.
Okay,
And then she starts really early
gotcha.
on Friday morning.
Sophie, the MMA conference is also on September 30th. So, which I'm signed up for.
Okay, so that might delay a little bit what she can do, but we'll work through it. I'll see if I can get some other dates.
I signed up, but I'm gonna back out, I think.
I know, I know the COVID thing again.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, so we're moving on to the next item.
Hmm.
So, okay, review of the planning board recommendation for revisions to the mobile food vendor ordinance to allow certain qualifying applicants on property owned by the University of Maine to obtain permits issued by the code enforcement officer. We've gone around, like I said earlier, we've gone around on this and appears that we may have a conclusion. I asked that I want Kyle to be able to kind of go away and not have to come back to this. So if there is a recommendation of a change, I need to have an exact wording change. So Kyle will be done with any of this stuff going forward. So Kyle.
Hi, everyone. So yeah, as we just kind of briefly touched on, council committee had talked about this a minor amendment to the mobile food vendors ordinance amendment, ordinance language a few months ago. They recommended the draft language go to the planning board for public hearing. The planning board held that public hearing in July. The board had no recommended changes, and there were also no public comments at that public hearing. I think from a land use perspective, the board mostly appreciated the fact that the goal of this is to kind of use the same consistency that we already have in the ordinance for restaurants and retail businesses, other sorts of similar types of commercial operations, and that applying that similar kind of language and standards and zoning to something like food trucks or other mobile food vendors would make sense. So if council at this point didn't have any recommended changes to the language, the next step would be kind of final committee okay, and then set it up for a council public hearing to continue the adoption process.
I'm good.
How's
I'm good with
everybody
that,
feeling?
Kyle. Yeah. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
You can't see me. No, I was just going to say I'm good with that. We've talked about this at length.
I also don't have any language changes to recommend, and also want to acknowledge that the university has a pretty rigorous process for looking at this language as well, or for those standards as well, right? So I think I think we're good on both sides.
Anybody else?
No other hands.
Just to clarify, you have already called the public hearing for this ordinance. We would have pulled it from the public hearing list if it wasn't ready.
Looks like we're ready to move forward.
Great. So Kyle, you're good to move this forward.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to my last item, review of draft revisions to land use ordinance related to commercial marijuana activities. Once again, we talked about this extensively in the committee. And once again, I want Kyle to be able to walk away from this. If there is anything that we do not like or want something changed, we need the exact wording so we can finalize this.
Okay, so yeah, this one is a little bit more involved. So we had a couple presentations and conversations at the committee level about this. This relates to kind of resolving the moratorium for marijuana retail stores on Park Street in the C2 district. But as we went into the committee discussions, we also staff had a few small kind of questions and other items to address with the marijuana establishment ordinance language that just didn't get brought up initially when the ordinance was being drafted. So this is the first time we've looked at draft ordinance language for the changes that council had alluded to and recommended in the committee meetings. It does a few things primarily. First, the biggest, addressing the moratorium. It removes marijuana retail stores as an allowable use in the C2 district on Park Street. So you'll see that on the second page in the table of land uses, that the S with the 15 footnote is crossed out, showing that it's no longer an allowable use in the C2. The second thing that we had touched on in the conversations previously was allowing small scale cultivation facilities in the low density residential district, similar to how they were allowed in the forest and agriculture district. So that language is shown in the section for cultivation facilities, where, if you go to 4A2, it now says marijuana cultivation facilities in the FNA and LDR districts. It talks about, those can't be more than 500 square feet of mature plant canopy. So it's just mirroring that language that before was in the FNA, now it's in FNA and LDR based on this language. And then finally, we talked about the idea of marijuana nurseries, which are, per the state law, they're a type of cultivation facility, but they're a little different than the other cultivation facilities in that there's some retail component to it. And the majority of the growing area is for immature plants or seedlings. And the state law does limit the area of the nurseries to 1,000 square feet of kind of cultivation area. So the idea of marijuana nurseries is added to the cultivation facility definition language, as well as there is a standard, again, in 4A7 this time, added specifically for marijuana cultivation facilities that are operating specifically as a marijuana nursery, that they would only be allowed to operate in the Forest and Agriculture District and Commercial 1 districts, which were the districts that we had sort of talked about and council recommended going forward with in the last committee meeting. Other than that, I think the majority of it, there were a couple kind of language changes to clarify some wording at different places, but no other really changes to intent anywhere. If anyone has any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Cheryl?
Any questions?
So Kyle, I have two questions. And this is just state law, whatever you know is fine. Can a nursery that isn't specifically marijuana, like just say a plant store, or can they sell immature marijuana plants? If they're like, I'm gonna say greenhouse.
Yep.
Is that per state law, is that considered?
Well, they would need to be licensed as a marijuana nursery. As far as if they got that license, would they be able to sell both like regular
Right.
plants and I'm not 100% sure on that, but I do know that they would have to be licensed and get approved by the state for their cultivation license as a marijuana nursery.
If they were selling,
Yeah.
they were selling clones.
Yeah.
And my second question, thank you, is the C2.
Mhm.
If at some point in the next couple years, the federal government decriminalizes marijuana and that barrier is lifted, how difficult would it be if we take the C2 off totally? And I don't know if there's a way to put a caveat in any of this ordinance language. How difficult would it be for a retailer to come back into that zone if the feds have lifted? Because that's the only thing that's keeping that zone is the federal government from being a retail area. I guess my question is, would it be difficult for somebody to come in? Would they have to go through a contract zone kind of process, or would they be able to just come in and start?
So I think the primary reason that, for not having it as an allowed use in the C2 right now is because of, in talking with the university, it seemed like the university's intent was that it wasn't allowed on campus, and that we didn't want it in close proximity to the campus, which that C2 corridor it's as close as you can be to the campus.
Right.
But there's no state law on the marijuana side that requires a setback from a university campus. There's a state required setback from schools, but not from universities. So if it changed at the federal level, I'm not sure it would be much different in the future. Either way, I think it would be up to council's intent at the time. If the way marijuana businesses were regulated changed at the state or federal level, and then it became more common or less restricted or regulated in some way, and the council decided, okay, now we're okay expanding this to this corridor because of whatever changes, or because there's a different viewpoint from the university and they don't mind it being in that area. I mean, you could do it as a contract zone on like an individual basis, but you could also make an amendment, just as easily as the S in the table was crossed out in this amendment. I mean, you could just as easily put that S
Put that
back in to make it an allowable use. As far as putting in language now to kind of preemptively react to something in the future, I would have to talk with our town attorney about something like that.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think, just as that, that food truck amendment that we kind of just talked about is kind of as small of an ordinance amendment as you can make, and something like that is pretty easy of a process to get through. So I do think if there was, support across the board, and, as far as the actual change in the ordinance was very small scale of just saying, yep, now it's allowed in this district, all the other standards would already be in place. So I don't think it would be too much work if that ever came up.
Okay, thank you. I was just curious how that would work. Thanks, Kyle.
Sure thing.
Anybody else?
No other hands?
Great. So I just want to say thank you, Kyle, for all the work that you put on this and most everything else. You've been very flexible and understanding through these processes, and I truly appreciate all the work you've done.
Sure. So this, the next step for this would be to send it to public hearing with the planning board. So if the council was ready to, they were okay with the language to accomplish everything that, the recommendations that, we felt were accomplished through this, then we would be able to set the date for the public hearing at the planning board level to kind of formally start that adoption process. So that would be the only feedback I was looking for, really, if there were no other changes needed.
Yeah, I mean, can we all, Tom, can we all just show our hands if, to give Kyle the go ahead?
Hands up. Go for it.
That was pretty unanimous.
Yep.
Great. Well,
Thank you.
So let's see. I don't think I have anything else, so I'm going to hand this off to you, Tom.
Actually, I'm wondering if we could just skip over the finance committee and go right to the comprehensive plan committee, since the individuals who are interested in the contract zone are here in the council chambers. So Megan, if you don't mind, could we go to the comprehensive plan implementation committee at this point?
Nope, that is fine. Let me just scroll back up on my agenda. I'm like really happy to not use paper, but sometimes it's, I'm scrolling through these documents can get a little crazy. Okay, so we're going to have a review of the planning board recommendations for the contract zone to allow for a counseling office at 163 Forest Avenue. And I assume that this will be Kyle.
Yeah, so I can just get all my stuff done in a row. That works out. So yeah, I think the council committee, I'm not sure if it was full council or not, but we had met with the applicant for this contract zone request in the past to kind of get a general feel from council about the idea and the support, so we could move forward with some idea of whether there was support for this contract zone. Council kind of gave that general okay, so we went to the planning board with the actual draft contract zone agreement in July for the public hearing, and there weren't too many comments involved. So just to kind of refresh people's minds, this lot 163 Forest Ave, there was an existing 2-family dwelling structure there with a kind of a long gravel driveway into a more expanded gravel parking area. And the applicant was interested in doing a counseling office, which is not normally allowed in the low density residential district. But because of their desire to kind of keep it as a smaller scale, more secluded office, it seemed like the intent of what they were trying to do did fit in with the low density residential feel. even though the use itself wasn't allowed. So staff, we drafted a draft contract zone agreement. It sort of uses the same template as all the other contract zone agreements in town. So generally, the one unique area will be section 1, which can be found on sort of the bottom of page 1 and into all of page 2 and 3. And that's where we create the specific standards and conditions of the agreement that would restrict the use to make sure that it doesn't go above and beyond the kind of scope of the surrounding area and create any problems for abutters or kind of make it feel like it's no longer part of that low density residential district. So as part of the materials I'd sent out, I had sent to Sophie was the planning board memo that sort of goes over why some of the standards that are in the document were created, the limits on square footage and parking and things like that. So at the planning board meeting, the abutter, I believe, to I guess to the north side of their lot, there was one comment just to really verify that while the counseling office would be allowed, that no other economic development zone use in the future would be able to just sort of come in at a much larger scale and sort of change the feel of the neighborhood. So we explained that, that's really the whole point of some of the standards in there was to prevent that from happening, that the only land use from the economic development zone district that would be allowed is that medical office use, and that the only other uses allowed on the property would be low density residential uses that are already allowed. And that even with the medical office, with caps on number of parking spaces, square footage of floor area, that it would allow for a very small expansion in the future if the current applicant wanted to add maybe 1 or 2 more other counselors, but it wouldn't allow for an entire medical facility, a much larger establishment to kind of come in and operate different than the current applicant. And finally, the planning board had some discussion around the parking, but ultimately was okay with the language as is. We came up with that 15 parking space amount really based on what the applicant's scale was now and their hopeful scale in the coming years in the future, making sure that it would accommodate what they're looking to do, but also looking at the current off-street parking area on the lot and seeing how that could be utilized and how what's currently there could be configured to match that kind of roughly 15 space amount. So aside from that, there were no other comments made at the public hearing. So now, similar to the food vendor amendment, I think council already technically set the public hearing with the idea that if there were any big changes that council was going to recommend here, we could always delay that. But yeah, I'm happy to hear any feedback if anyone has any questions or concerns with the way it's currently drawn up.
Thank you, Kyle. So the planning board has recommended that the council move forward with the contract as is, and the question before us is whether we are all interested in doing that. So do folks have any questions for Kyle or want to raise any concerns about the language as written, or are we ready to move forward?
Ready to move forward.
I'm ready to move forward.
It sounds like we're, Jeff, I can barely see you over there in the owl.
I'm fully in support of it. I think this is a critical need for our community. So let's go.
Okay, and I agree. So it looks like that is a unanimous, no changes, ready to move forward.
Great. Thanks, everyone.
Just
Thanks, Kyle.
to clarify the next steps is that Nancy is going to advertise a public hearing twice because that's what the law requires. We will have that public hearing on October 18th, which is our next regular council meeting. You cannot approve it at that meeting because it's considered an amendment to the land use ordinance. So it would wait. If Dara and Garrett are on a mission that requires speed, we could schedule a special meeting before a committee meeting to adopt if that's what we needed to do after.
Great.
Well, I'll pass the baton to Tom.
Thank you. So back to Finance Committee, and we are going to do, let's make sure I've got the right sequence. Citizen request, waiver of permit fees related to Orono Economic Development Corporation's construction project on Taylor Road. And I believe Mr. Bass is here to speak to us.
Yes, am I live?
Wow.
Okay, thank you, Tom. Yes, I hinted to this and at the prior meeting when I spoke with community development. I think a lot of you folks were present and saw the background. I don't know how much, Tom, I should go into that again.
I don't think you need to, Bob.
Okay, I mean, is everyone familiar with this project in broad strokes? Okay, we do have the same slides as presented before, but essentially, again, I'm representing Orono Economic Development, which is well, Sophie's right there. I don't know whether we call it a quasi, it's totally independent of the town, but yet it was established by the town for a specific purpose. That purpose is essentially moot now in that the building has been sold. We are doing several projects, one of which is this. We felt the purchase of this property and the potential repurposing to an outdoor center was very much in alignment with the town's comprehensive plan and OEDC's mission. It's moving right along. We actually will be selecting a general contractor for renovation construction this Wednesday. The ultimate start date is then dependent on their availability, but so very common with the outdoor centers in the state of Maine. There's lots of parties involved that make them successful. And the municipality is very often one of them. Two brief examples would be the Sugarloaf Outdoor Center, where the land, building, access road is all owned by the town. Capital maintenance is done by the town. It's the buildings leased and operated by Sugarloaf Mountain Corporation. Quarry Road right in Waterville. Again, it's now City of Waterville land. City of Waterville Parks and Recreation does the grooming and summer maintenance. And the Friends of Quarry Road, I believe is what it's called, operates the yurt that they lease from and collect ticket money. So anyways, that's just the preamble, if you will, of that. I did highlight in the packet you got the three major components of the comprehensive plan that I feel match exactly what we're doing. So that's a town initiative, not OEDC's. So one very, one first step, again, and Terry had asked for this last time, the budget is estimated, and again, it's estimated, we're gonna know concretely on Wednesday, but somewhere between 225 and 250 probably is what it's going to cost us. The grant we received was only it was $120,000. We have to raise the difference, either in cash or in-kind donations and services. Hence, I'm asking the town to consider waiving approximately, it's a little over 1,000, could be, if I miscalculated, maybe it's $1,200 in permitting fees that a normal project would entail. We've already, because of my lack of approaching you folks earlier, we've already paid the full site plan review costs and was unanimously approved for our site plan project. So I guess that's, to be quick, that's what's on the table in front of you. It's just it's a way of a first, hopefully, first step in the town supporting this project that we feel will in fact be a very good asset for the town and may influence somebody to live here, and it may hopefully have a little trickle down effect of economics with people visiting from away, doing something out there, and then going in town. So I rest my case.
Thank you, Bob.
Yep.
Comments from council? Questions, comments? I've got a comment. I think it's a great project. I really do, and I'm very impressed that OEDC has picked this up and has carried it forward. My heart says we should waive the fee. My brain says, wait a minute, there are other nonprofit, great organizations in our community that do things. I'm thinking of the kayak shelter that has been built on Bennett Road recently. And we have historically not waived fees for anything other than the town or the school. So my mind says there's got to be something really, really special about this, even though I think it's a great project for us to waive this fee when we haven't waived fees for other nonprofit worthy activities in the past.
Tom, did they ask for the fees to be waived?
I don't know. I do not know that, Bob. Let's see if other councilors want to weigh in on this.
Yeah, and I'm in the same place as Tom, because in the scope of the project, it's a small piece of the project, and it does potentially open up to something that's going to benefit the taxpayers. And my heart says, like, this is great. Like, yes, let's do this. But like Tom, and it's not so much a question of has a nonprofit approached us in the past. The question is really, will nonprofits approach us in the future to say, well, you set a precedent, you waived those fees for this nonprofit, and that was the first time you did that. So now, we would also like you to waive the fees. And, waiving the fees for town and RSU projects, of course, makes sense because they're funded by taxpayer dollars. So it's kind of circular if you charge the taxpayers for their own money. But when it comes to, a pool of resources outside of the taxpayer dollars, then that's when it starts to get tricky. And so the question for us, even though, again, like Tom, in my heart is singing out yes, but I also worry about what happens in the future when we have now set a precedent that nonprofits who can come to the council and say, well, this does, this is in the interest of the public good, so do us a favor and help us bring it forward. Not only does that make it difficult and complicated, but also we would get into some very sticky situations about who are we giving favors to and who are we not. So we would have to be really, really specific and clear as to why we were making an exception to what is our standard practice.
Other comments, other councilors?
Probably nobody else.
Yes.
Yeah, so I recently read this book called Small Town Sustainability, which talked about the ability that small towns uniquely have to develop their own identity and brand, which is something that can really give them a purpose. And I think this particular project might be one of those things. I think given its potential benefit to the town, we might consider this, rather than consider it a policy setting precedent, we might consider this a one-time gift, particularly since the total cost of the town is relatively small. You know, the permitting fees are over $1,000. The actual town costs are under $500. It might provide our community another opportunity to expand programming for youth and families. I'm in support of the program, and I would just like to see us take a step that's proactive in a fix up.
Thank you.
So I think, I don't want to cut off any other counselors, but I think that the devil can be in the detail. And when I think about what Jeff just said, I think about the fact that we're concerned about setting a precedent that opens the door. However, the town council holds within its entire discretion. Nobody can come back later and say you set a precedent to give a donation to a public worthy cause. So OEDC is a 501c3. We have economic development funds. This is an economic development project. I would suggest that while the council might deny this request, the council might grant OEDC a donation of $1,500 and lost the number. $1,066.
Oh, I like that. That gets my mind and my heart in the same place.
I do too, Sophie, and I thank you for that, but that takes the wind out of my sails when I ask for a general donation to the capital campaign.
You can ask individuals, Bob.
All right. Anyways, okay, I'll be quiet.
What do you think of Sophie's suggestion? I think it's a great compromise here. Great way to go forward. I beg pardon?
Laura.
Laura, did you? Oh, yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I would have said yes to this. My understanding of OEDC is we've got 2 counselors that sit on this board in kind of an assigned committee fashion, that there is a connection to the town. This isn't like a unique nonprofit coming to us. This is a wing off the town that we're connected to and directly kind of support, was formed to before we had the economic development staff as like doing that work for the town. And so I'm comfortable with waiving this, and I would hope that we could make a donation, as well. I think that this could have a huge positive impact for the community in providing rec activities, economic activities, and a draw for people to want to live here. So I'm in support in every way, shape, or form of this, but I don't think OEDC is just any nonprofit knocking at our door. It has it was founded for a unique reason. Its governance includes the council, of which 2 of our current council sits on. So that's my perspective.
Thank you, Laura. Anything else?
I'm in
Sure.
support of the donation. I also was worried about precedent setting, but it is it is a wonderful project, and I've been out to the building, and the town will use it, and so will people from Bangor and Beasley and Hamden and Old Town. I mean, it's a draw for sure. I like the solution that's been proposed. It makes sense. It makes sense to me.
Anybody else? It sounds as though the majority would support Sophie's suggestion to make the donation to the group equal to the amount that the fees would be. Can we have a show of hands to see if we have a? Yeah, okay, I think we're all set with that.
All right.
Paul?
I thank you very much.
You're very welcome, Bob. Keep up the good work and good luck
Okay.
on the bid that comes in on Wednesday.
Yeah, what was, keep us posted?
Please.
Yeah. Well, if I may have to take the next day off to let the numbers settle. Except it's audit.
Just to clarify, Mitch, who happens to be hanging out in the background of this meeting, reminded me that OEDC is a 501c4, not a 3. The donation that you will see on the books will actually go to the ski club, which will flow through to OEDC.
Sophie,
Yeah.
I mean, it can go to the ski club, certainly to that fund, but that was set up specifically for private donors that need to, or that wish to take a tax write-off. I don't know if there's any value for the town to run it through that channel.
Tomorrow, when you come in for the audit, we can debate C3s and C4s and decide who the check gets made out to.
That's fine. Yep.
Awesome.
So I thank you, and I guess my work is done here.
We're all set, Bob. Thank you for the time. Well,
Welcome.
let's move on to the last item on our business today, which is contracting for town electricity. And Sophie is going to lead us on this one.
I am. So first I gave away my background,
Oh,
which is never good. So let me just look at real quick. I think Dara now has nice background. There we go. I got it. So the town for many, many years has gone through a process of working with competitive energy services and to go out to bid for our electrical services. So on the individuals on the residential side, you know, you get your standard offer and then you can go find others. We are a fairly large electrical user. So we use an outside company to help vet the bids for us. So just to put it into perspective for folks, the town has 26 electrical accounts that we use in a year approximately 1.46 million kilowatts, so quite a bit. Our capacity tag, or the total kilowatt hours that we use on our peak hour of our peak day, are 212 kilowatts. We worked with competitive energy services, soliciting contract pricing. We received 53 quotes from 6 different companies, spanning from 12-month contracts all the way up to 60-month contracts. Those contracts, the quotes came back with both fixed, pass-through, well, all fixed, pass-through, and inclusive pricing structures. The town has generally gone with inclusive pricing structure. It comes through on our percent bill. It's transparent. We have decided that that is a good method for us to use. It is not the cheapest, but it is a standard rate. We are recommending that we stay within that inclusive pricing structure. We had quotes, the low quotes ranged from 9.229 cents per kilowatt hour on a 12-month contract to 7.97 cents per kilowatt hour on a 60-month contract. I talked at length with Rob Yerxa about this process. As you will recall, Rob is supervising facilities, so he is the department head in charge of this. He noted that there is significant volatility right now in the electrical market related to natural gas pricing. And as such has recommended a 36-month contract. It gives us stability for 3 years, but we're not locked in for the full 5 years. The low quote at the 36-month contract was 8.169 cents per kilowatt hour. We would estimate that to be about $119,430 a year, 119,430. The low quote on the and that was with First Point Power. The low quote on the 60-month inclusive pricing contract was from Constellation New Energy. That was at the rate of 7.97 cents per kilowatt hour, which is estimated at $116,520 per year. This does not, the pricing and the use does not take into consideration our bill credit agreement. That doesn't start until the project is up and going, so I wouldn't expect that in the next year. If you base the analysis on their estimated annual use, it looks like the cost to go from a 60-month contract down to a 36-month contract would be approximately $2,910 per year. So staff normally just executes this contract behind the scenes, and we pay our bill every month, and it has never come to council before. However, we normally go with the low bid. We have been going for longer contracts when the pricing comes in low. Because we are recommending that we value the flexibility and we wouldn't go with the low bid, I wanted to talk with council before I executed the agreement. I would put this item on the council consent in October, but I need to execute an agreement this month because pricing will get reissued after September 30th and the prices will go up.
Okay.
Is that feedback?
Questions, comments? Cheryl?
Sophie, so these rates, it's a 60-month for 7.97
Yes,
and 36 for 8.169.
yes.
So do these rates, if there was a 60-month rate, do these rates ever fluctuate, or is it contract, no matter if the rates go down, it doesn't matter. If the rates go up, it doesn't matter. This is our contract.
This is our contract.
Okay. Okay. I'm happy to do what staff feels is best at this point. So good.
Any other comments, questions? Looks like everybody is okay with that. Makes sense. All right. You have any town managers report for us?
I do. I have a few things. First, I have wonderful news to report, and that is that the individual who we had entered into an arrangement to buy back his property, and then we had extended the arrangement, came in on Monday and paid, last Thursday, and paid everything. So I am now in the process of quit claiming that back. I will execute the deed and put it on consent for you to confirm, because only you can convey property. Tax bills have gone out. The phone has been ringing off the hook here at Town Hall. A couple of things, just in case counselors get questions. First, if people have issues about their value, they should definitely reach out to the assessor. You have 185 days from the date of commitment to ask for an abatement. Sometimes you don't even have to go through that process. Sometimes a conversation with the assessor will give you a good sense of where you are with that. If they have an issue because they sold their property in June and they got a tax bill, under state law, the tax bill is well, number one, we don't have to send a tax bill under state law, but we do. That assessment goes to whoever owned the property on April 1st. It's like you freeze time at that point for the purpose of the assessment. People, if they got a bill, sometimes we know about it and we will give the new owners just a courtesy copy. Sometimes we don't know about it. So if they got a bill, they should definitely let us know or send it on to the new owners. My staff and I are preparing. The audit started today. They are not on site today, but will be here Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Normally it's been the council chair and the finance committee chair that have stopped in and talked to them. Tom, I don't know how you want to deal with that, if it's just you or if you want to ask somebody else to stop in too, that's up to you.
I'd be happy if another council member would feel comfortable stopping in to meet them and speak with them. So just, I guess we'll leave it. Let me know if you're interested. Just send me an email.
Okay. Thus far, seems like it's going okay. So today I had Mitch and I met with President Fermini Mundy, the provost, the athletic director, the dean of students, the associate vice president, or no, the vice president for economic development, R&D, the interim vice president for finance administration and chief of staff. I know I'm probably forgetting someone. It was a wonderful group. We talked a lot about town-gown relationships. One of the things that they brought up as kind of low-hanging fruit that they would like to see is they would like to see us work together to create a more university-focused entrance into town. We are in the process right now of trying to design our temporary vinyl signs for the next 6 months to hopefully you guys by the end of getting to 6 months will have a plan for the big sign. I have put out there that if the university wants to help us with some graphics and design, that we would be really happy to more prominently talk about the university there. When we did the flag project, we actually permitted every pole, not every other pole, with the idea that we might be able to get some university flags put up, and I've offered if they'd like to buy flags and the hardware for those flags, that we would be happy to let them put them up because they're putting them up anyway. But if we can find creative ways to kind of blend so that when people are coming to games and campus events, it doesn't feel like you're going through a town and then you're just at the university. I think they want some, and I think that makes sense. We are also talking about economic development initiatives, workforce development initiatives. They're doing some studies around some things that might help support workers, childcare, stuff like that. It's public that they're working on a boutique hotel. We talked a little bit about that. While it's on the university campus, this is not a nonprofit venture, so the town will be assessing and receiving tax dollars for that venture. We also talked about ways that we could kind of expand town down to maybe include some landlords to talk about to work with our community services division and management around some town student issues. And of course, that they were thrilled at that idea. And then the final thing that we did talk about was I expressed our concerns around community space and around wanting to make sure we were using the most effective, making the most effective use of our tax dollars. And we batted around some ideas, and we'll have further conversation about the potential of partnering to maybe do some things. I was very much taken, you know, we've had a really good relationship with Stuart Harvey at Facilities and Robert Dana in Student Life, Jake Ward with Economic Development, but they've always been kind of siloed. This conversation was excellent because we kind of brought everybody together and could really brainstorm how it could work across departments. Mitch, one of the things I've asked of Mitch when I promoted him to the Director of Community Development was to help us capitalize more on our university relationship. So President Farini Monday suggested that we will probably meet multiple times a year. This will just be a standing effort. So I was very, very happy with that. I would like your permission to nominate Aaron Hootery from the city of Bangor to the MRC Board of Directors. He's an interim right now. He's filling the seat that Kathy Conlow had. Historically, Bangor has always had a seat on the MRC. They have by far the most waste of anyone. And I found him just to be an outstanding board member, but that is not a me decision. That would. You
We
guys,
all set with that? Yep, I see nods.
okay, I will do that.
Good.
So my second thing, and this is a little bit more complicated, but it needs action before your next meeting. I have a, so the town of Orono belongs to Maine Public Employers retirement system. We are what's known as a participating local district. When somebody comes to work for us, they have a very brief window of time to decide to take retirement. If you decide to take retirement, the town is obligated to pay its percentage. The employee is obligated to pay their percentage, which are not small pieces of change. And in order to get out of the system, you have to take all your money and leave. Once you make that decision right now, up until now, there has never been an option to get in unless you move to a different employer that is also a participating district. So the state legislature had a law change this year that said that participating local districts can opt in. So we can opt in. It's a rule that right now is, well, they said everybody could. The rule that's going through rulemaking right now is that we can opt in if we choose to allow anybody to join the system as long as they join before November 1st. So these are, they have to have been employed for 5 years or more, and they had to opt out when they started. And then, starting in 2022, every year, employees who have been employed for less than 5 years would have an opportunity from April 1st to November 1st each year to opt in. That sounds great. The issue that we have is under federal law, the way we would treat those people is completely different. Instead of pre-tax contributions, these are all taxable contributions. I have not heard a hue and cry from anybody who is trying to get into the system. Right now, the town offers, it does offer the main public employers retirement for all staff. Those who elect not to take it, we match at the same level as we would for main PERS into a defined contribution plan. So the town cuts a check and that's the end of our liability for that for that retirement. Whereas with main PERS, we have an obligation until the person can no longer collect retirement. So I don't feel like it's just my choice. I'm not sure that I would recommend that we opt in to the system. I think it will set up significant record keeping, but I wanted your perspective.
Comments, questions, Cheryl?
Sophie, does the main PERS, is that in lieu of Social Security?
No.
So they take out Social Security and then it's just a retirement plan? So when, yeah,
So employees are contributing, and the town are contributing to Social Security and to this retirement.
and to the retirement plan. So if they leave the town, can they roll over whatever they've contributed into an IRA?
So if they left the town and they had more than 5 years vested in main PERS, they would be in better stead to hold it there and collect their 2% a year if they're vested. If they're not vested and they left, they could take their money out. They don't get any of the contributions that the town has made. They get
Okay.
their contributions back.
Okay, all right. As a teacher, the retirement system was more of, you didn't collect Social Security. I mean, you kind of opted out of Social Security and opted into the state retirement plan, untaxed. And so this is different then.
This is different. We are, I'm gonna get the number wrong, but a 218 community. We have an agreement with the federal government that we will collect Social Security.
Okay.
As teachers, we didn't opt out. We were not allowed to participate in Social Security.
Right. Right. Which confused, yeah, which confused, if you moved to another state or if you stop teaching, you didn't get Social Security. I mean, it was just a mess. So, but you could withdraw your retirement. I don't know. So what's the best deal in a situation like this?
We offer people a retirement plan. If they don't choose main PERS, they have another plan. So
Yes.
it's not that they don't have any plan, and they also have Social Security.
Yes.
So I guess that'd be fine if we didn't have the option, didn't have the initiative.
I was wondering why somebody would want to join main PERS. Like, would their incentive be, man, my portfolio had a bad year, so I'm gonna jump into main PERS at this point?
Well, so I'm probably gonna take a lot of liberty, but just having onboarded a few people through the years, main PERS is not cheap to be part of. And when you add that to what comes out for Social Security, it's really not cheap. Main PERS is a great deal if you think you're gonna make your career in a local government that's large enough to participate in main PERS. We have a lot of people coming into to work for us that don't necessarily see this as their career. They're either at the tail end and might put in 5 years or 6 years, or they're not sure. And where we're offering the defined contribution, which limits our post-retirement liability, they are thrilled because the rate that we match on the same ratio. So we are matching, the theory being, if I'm gonna spend X amount of dollars for you on main PERS, why wouldn't I spend the same amount on a different retirement system? So people are getting really nice matching contributions. And I think we're seeing kind of a push in the other direction right now, outside of, you will always see public safety taking main PERS. That's one of the reasons that we have a special plan. But other than that, I would say it's a toss up when somebody comes to us if they even want to invest in this.
I don't see any reason to keep off extra burden.
What you do. Any other
I had-
comments?
oh, I have two more quick things. First, we are approaching the end of the quarterly meeting setup. And so we're looking at October through December. When we decided we were going to try this all meetings format for the month of September, we said we were going to talk about it. I have a setup with this in mind from October to December. We get a fair number, at least 2 meetings, committee meetings a month. I don't know how you guys feel about this format. Do you want me to continue with this, or do you want to look at a different format?
I've been finding this format to be, manageable. I guess my question is more for staff, whether you feel like we're working at a pace that is comfortable or good for the things we're trying to get accomplished.
I think that this format works much better for staff. Under this format, if we're working on, for example, marijuana, and you want to make a tweak here, we can bring it back again this month. I don't have to wait for a whole month. Kyle can work on a couple of things at a time, as opposed to trying to keep something for multiple committees going and juggling that. My staff really likes it, but this is council, and council gets to make council's decisions.
Well, I'm glad to hear that that staff really likes it and that it works better for staff. To me, it's working fine. So if it's a benefit for staff to get the workflow flowing, then I think we could stick with it.
I agree.
Me too.
Me too.
I see nods. I think we're there.
Awesome. So my last item that I have listed out, at least, is just want to give you a heads up about next week. The agenda, Nancy has posted the agenda in the agenda center, the draft agenda, and it will pop up for people who hit the button starting tomorrow. But it is pretty, at this moment, entirely comp plan implementation committee. And it is talking, going through draft ordinance revisions for long-term rentals, short-term rentals. Kyle is working on unruly gatherings / disorderly properties and fee for police services. That section, Kyle met with landlords and we've had a really nice conversation, which has informed some of our choices with those ordinance revisions. But it also set us up for the second half of the meeting, which Kyle's going to walk us through, hopefully spark discussion around Orono's housing. And we have multiple kind of questions even outlined on the agenda to talk about, remind us what the comp plan says about housing, what were the identified areas of concern, what have we done to address some of those areas of concern, what is the regulatory landscape, an opportunity to brainstorm kind of what the issues are right now, and to give the committee the opportunity to talk about, okay, what's the next piece of work? Instead of talking about something this big, after we know all of this stuff, what is the next piece of work we want to look at around housing?
Anything else?
I have a quick question. For those
I have another question, just one more.
Just a sec, Jeff is,
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead. I can't see you, Jeff, so I can't tell.
For anybody who wants to talk to the assessor about abatement, is that contact information still on our website?
It is, it's the assessor's office. I might ask Belle to tweak it just a little bit, because it talks about value, but yes. Just remember, the assessor is here 1 day a week. Does other work for us, but it's 1 day a week. So when people call, they get put into the queue. He's usually very good about getting back to people at the end. We keep a running list of all of the contacts, and we're watching them get kind of resolved. And from your with my tax collector hat on, I'm processing some changes and to deal with some concerns, whether it be who got assessed or what the value was.
Cheryl, you had a question?
Yes, Sophie, do we have a sense of what we're dealing with as far as the COVID, as far as the rate, or what's happening in Orono at all?
So I'm trying to think what I can say. Yes, we have a sense. We have a sense that we have more positives than we did 3 weeks ago. The university is kind of working through its process. Watching wastewater results, we were climbing exponentially, and then Sunday when I got the result, it was right back down. They cautioned me not to read too much into that, so they will test again on Tuesday, and so they've been testing twice a week. So I should have more information. At this point, I would caution everybody to just acknowledge that Penobscot County is high transmission rate, and to behave accordingly. And it's kind of interesting because I was talking with President Fermini Mundy, she had to go into a restaurant in town that she had ordered from, and they had pulled out the per ordinance claim that everybody had to have a mask on, and she thought that was great. So clearly, people are taking steps in some form or fashion to try to stay safe. And if anybody wants more of those claims, even though it's not part of ordinance, we have them.
Any other questions, comments? Are we ready to adjourn? It's only 5:15. Awesome. Motion to adjourn, please.
So moved.
Moved and seconded. Just wave.
Bye.
Thank you all. Appreciate your time.